CatSynth TV.
Hey everybody, it's your guest reviewer JB here for CatSynth TV. Today we are talking to two of my favorite musicians. Right. Jerry King, once again, whom we have seen previously on this channel, and Dave Newhouse. Dave Newhouse, of course, not a stranger to anyone who watches this channel. First time we've actually spoken together virtually, as the case may be, but welcome to both of you. It's great to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We're glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's great to see you guys.
Yeah, one of the first things that I want to get to is, I was listening to this album, and we'll see a bigger picture of it on the screen right there. Manna Mirage, the latest release from both of you, featuring both of you at least. Manna Mirage, of course, is, Dave, you came to prominence, let's say it that way, or perhaps maybe most widely known for your work with the Muffins. The Muffins, one of my favorite bands, started, I believe, in the early 1970s back on the East Coast, put out a number of albums. Manna Mirage is the name of your current recording and composition endeavor, let's put it that way. Maybe it's not a band, maybe it's more of a concept, maybe we can even go into that. But it takes its name, of course, from the first published Muffins album. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
And so how do you define these things? Is Manna Mirage a band, or is Manna Mirage a brand name, so to speak, for your compositions? How is there a definition for this particular unit?
That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. It's definitely a band because I use a lot of the same people like Jerry on a lot of the tracks, but it's also like a project name, a project banner that all this music can kind of go underneath and stuff. And so having a rotating or a circle of musicians that I can work with, it gives me a little bit more flexibility to work with. And to tell you the truth, the reason why I chose the title Manna Mirage, and I asked all the Muffins about it and Steve Feigenbaum before I started, is, you think it's okay if I do this? And they said, sure. Billy came up with the name, so, he was good with it. And I did it because nobody would, if I put it out by my name, I don't think it would get much traffic at all, because who knows who I am. But I chose Manna Mirage to make that Muffin connection to that kind of American Canterbury music, because I wanted to continue in that style. And so that's why I chose it. Truth be told, I've always felt a little guilty about using it, and I thought by the fifth album, I've already established a pretty good base, and maybe I'm going to continue making albums, but it'll just be under a different title. That's all, different name.
Right. Wonderful. And you did talk a little bit about, over the years, you've used this kind of, as you phrase it, a circle of musicians, a number of different collaborators, including Jerry. Jerry, how did you get involved with all of this? Because there's a certain, at least currently, there's this big geographic distance between you two. How did you get involved with this?
It was through the Moonmen originally. And there's a whole story behind that about how that happened, but once I was in the Moonmen, Dave was kind enough to invite me. He sent me a song, and I don't even think I really even knew what it was for. He just sent me a song. I think it was maybe he was testing me or something. I don't know. He wanted me to add some bass guitar to it. And so I worked on that, and next thing you know, it's on the Manna Mirage album. So, but yeah.
Jerry had put out his first Cloud Over Jupiter album, and I heard it and bought it and really liked it, and so I got in touch with him, and I think I sent you my first Manna Mirage album, Blue Dogs, and said I really like the Cloud Over Jupiter album, and we should stay in touch and that sort of thing, because I could tell from that first Cloud Over Jupiter album that we had similar likes,
Well, following up on that, especially on the new one, Jerry, I think of you primarily as a guitarist and bass player, so forth, but you play quite a bit of trombone on the new Manna Mirage. Was that maybe your first act back in, marching band or whatever back in the day? I mean, is it something you picked up on later?
High school.
Yeah.
High school. Yeah. It was like 4th or 5th grade through about 9th or 10th. And then I dropped out of band because I was wild and a rebel and all that kind of stuff. But I always really loved trombone and the way it sounded, and I just wanted to keep up with it. And, you know, it's a stretch to say that I'm proficient at it, but I can do enough, you know, just to give that timbre in music, basically.
Sure.
Oh, Jerry's
So-
great. I'm so gassed to find a trombone player. You know, when I heard that Jerry was taking his trombone back up again, and I think he went out and bought a new one or a used one or something, and he was actually considering practicing. I jumped on it immediately. Oh, you have to add some trombone now. Sorry, that's the way it goes. You know.
Sorry, you're doing it whether you want to or
That's
not.
right.
Jerry.
It's got to be. It's got to be. We need trombone. You can't have enough trombone, I don't think. You can quote me on that.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, I mean, it's just adding that sound in there. It's, you know, it's not like I'm going to take a solo or something, but just layering the trombone in there, it makes a big difference.
It's lovely.
So.
It's lovely. It makes it lovely. It gets us close
So
to.
again,
It gets us close to that Chicago horn section. You know.
right.
Sounds great with your horns, Dave, too.
Yeah,
So
it's a good blend.
Works well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So in addition to Jerry, there are a number of collaborators, musicians that you pulled from, again, on this new Manna Mirage album, including, but not limited to, Guy Sagers, you know, the fantastic bass player, Forrest Fang. You know, can you talk a little bit about how this album was put together? I know, for example, you know, leading back, you know, talking with Guy a while back, you know, his most recent album that came out on Discus, you know, was done in the throes of the global lockdown, et cetera, you know, kind of, you know, passing files electronically along to people, you know, in different parts of Europe, different parts of the United States. Actually, don't you actually play on that too? That new eclectic maybe band? Don't you play on that, Dave?
One of them. I don't think I play on the new one. I think I play on the first one and not the second one, I believe. Yeah.
But so for this album, again, you know, you have a lot of people such as Jerry in very different geographic locations. Now, when you're getting somebody to put something down on this, are you, you know, sending a fairly detailed chart? You know, you're sending, you know, a score, a part, you know, play these notes at this time, or, you know, are you saying, you know, you give them some chords and say, you know, fit something in there? How does that work?
I leave it up to, you know, some of my favorite film directors are the ones who would get these really good actors together and they would just say, you know what to do, you know, and they would just let them go. And that's pretty much what I do with everybody. Sometimes I do write lines. For the last album, I had a particular line that I asked Forrest Fang to play. Sometimes I give Jerry bass lines. Sometimes he comes up with his own stuff or trombone lines. But mostly, I mean, for Guy Sagers, I gave him some bass lines, a few bass lines, but then I said, I want you to record another bass and you just do what you want to do. And he did, by golly, he did, you know, so, I just, when I send Sean Rickman the drum tracks, all I say is, you know what to do. That's all I say. And, you know, and so I like to leave a lot of it up to the musicians. I don't write anything out. I'm not really good with notation at all. I mean, I can read it, but really slowly, you know, I'm real slow at it. I hate writing it out. I used to write out all of Tom Scott's horn parts in the Muffins and I hated it. But, you know, it's the only way that Tom could play it. So, but I don't do that anymore. I'll play a line, like I'll send one of the other musicians, I'll send Jerry a track and I'll play the bass line on piano or something with a click track, and then the reference track over top of it, and he takes it from there. So it's everything. Everybody kind of does everything orally, you know.
Let me just make a note. You did bring up the drummer on this album, and that drummer is just amazing.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
just incredible.
He's the shit, Sean Rickman. Yeah.
So let's take up a little bit of that from your end, Jerry. Now, when Dave sends you, you know, these tracks, you talked about a little bit in your previous answer, but for this particular project, for the Manna Mirage thing, you know, when he sends you the tracks and he says, you know, fit a little trombone on here, what's the process that goes through your head? I mean, you know, clearly, I will just say this, we may use this, we may edit this part out, but, just from following you on social media, you're always trying different chord voicings on the guitar and things like this. When Dave sends you, a part for, and says, figure out a trombone thing, what goes through your head? Are you listening down to the harmony? Are you trying to figure out an individual line? How do you work that out?
Usually with trombone, Dave sends a piano track.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much follow that. I make suggestions like maybe I want to harmonize something, or, sometimes he'll bite on that and sometimes he won't. But usually he sends me a piano track to work off of. Mm-hmm. And as far as bass guitar goes, it's the same process basically, but then I take the liberty of veering off from that sometimes. I think it was, I'm trying to remember what album it was from Manna Mirage, but we wrote a couple songs together. And I started out with a bass track. He really liked the bass track, and then he built on that, and we worked on that song over a while.
Yeah. Moon X is a little bit different.
I got the stack of albums.
Yeah, when we record Moon X, it's pretty much, we don't really have any, like Jerry will send me some guitar chords, like a framework, and he'll let me kind of do what I want to it, and then I'll send it back and he'll do what he wants to it. So the Moon X stuff is really much more, vague, not as planned, kind of, if I can say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we usually, with Moon X, I'll send him something, he'll send something back, I'll send him something again. We discuss it. And if we want to make changes, then we make changes. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's pretty open. I play off of what he sends me, he plays off what I send him, that kind of thing. It's very free.
It's very organic.
I'll say free.
It's very
free
organic. Organic the way that it grows. It grows kind of organically the Manna Mirage albums are a little different. They're a little bit more specific or precise, as far as the lines go and stuff. But Moon X is different.
Sure.
It's very, very much a collaboration, from start to finish.
Well, it's the same concept with the Cloud Over Jupiter stuff. I've got Cloud Over Jupiter over here on the left. He's got Manna Mirage on the right. And we know what we want for those projects. And we kind of direct each other into where we want the song to go. But with Moon X in the center of it all, we just throw it out there and see if it sticks. And if it sticks, then we go from there,
If it stinks, we go from there. We just want to make sure it doesn't stink, but it sticks instead. We like to. Moon X is a lot more democratic than our other projects. Our separate projects are that it's our sound that we're trying to get down, but Moon X is our sound, so it's a lot different.
All right, perfect. That kind of covered one of my next questions, but I do want to follow up on that just a little bit. So let's say, for example, when you're at home and you're just working on ideas, you feel inspired, you go over to the keyboard or the horn or the guitar or whatever the instrument may be, and you start, working out some ideas. I mean, do you write with intention for a specific project, such as, like, I need to write something for Moon X, or I want to write something for Moon X, or do you just start writing and coming up with ideas and you think this would be good for this, while at the same time this would be good for this? How does that work? How does the compositional intent go?
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, for me, I work out on guitar every day. Every morning I go down and I usually do like about a 45-minute to an hour workout on guitar, and I come up with something. I take a little camera or something and record myself of what I just did, so I don't forget it, and then I'll play with it for a week or two, and slowly develop it, and after that week or two, that's when I decide whether or not it's going to be, if it's something that Moon X would be good, or if it would be Cloud Over Jupiter. It's not something that I consciously go downstairs and say, I'm going to write a Cloud Over Jupiter song today. That never happens. It's just, I wait for something to come from outer space to influence my brain. The aliens that are circling the Earth in their spacecraft, they send down messages to me, and that's when I create.
Well, that explains a lot, Jerry. So is that where those ideas come from? Good Lord.
Yes.
No.
You thought they were mine?
I work exactly the same way. I don't sit down to do a project song. I just record something. It sounds really good. Oh, this would be good on the next Manna Mirage, or this would be good for Moon X, or this would be good for some other kind of project. I let the music, the main engine. The music determines where it's going to go. I've never had any luck doing it any other way. I can't say I want to do a concept album. It never works out. Always sounds like shite. So it's important that the music, the music kind of takes the lead, and the ideas come from the muses. For me, it's always the muses, right? Every now and then I'll wake up in the middle of the night, and I have a microphone on my phone, and I'll record this melody or bass line that I heard in my head, and I'll tap on my chest the whole time, bum 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 ba-dum bum bum bum, that kind of thing, and I'll take those ideas and start to manipulate them a little bit.
All right, so moving on, I do want to talk about, like I said, I do want to talk a little bit about the compositional stuff that's going on your music, especially on this new Manna Mirage album. I mean, to my ear, there's a lot of really smooth voice leading. The harmonies are flowing into each other really nicely in a very kind of, your writing has kind of a tart sort of sense to it. I mean, it's very smooth, but it's also got that tartness to it. Do you have any particular method that you're using when you're harmonizing things? What gives it that sound? Can we talk about that?
I have no idea. It's the muses. It's what I've been absorbing all these years. I grew up, my parents had season's tickets to American musicals at a local theater in the Round that was near us. So we would go and we'd hear 4 or 5 American musicals every summer. Sound of Music and Camelot and Guys and Dolls and South Pacific, and I absorbed all of that. I fell in love with Burt Bacharach really, really early on in my early teens. Burt Bacharach used to say, never be ashamed to write a pretty melody, And so all that stuff just got in my DNA. Later Soft Machine, I heard Soft Machine, and I plugged that into my bloodstream. I injected that, and it's just it all gets in there and all gets mixed around, and I spit it out on these albums. So I have no idea where the melodies come from or the harmonies. Absolutely no idea, but they come to me fully formed, pretty much.
Now, we did mention that there is a new Moon X in the works.
Yay!
The Moon X, again, just for a little bit of context, Moon X kind of evolved out of a previous group that you two had called the Moon Men. We did a review a while back for the Moon X, the most recent Moon X album. We'll put a link to that up here on screen.
Thanks.
That was very nice.
If anyone wants to check this out. So the next one coming up, let me rewind a little bit, talking about that previous one, because one of the things that I really enjoyed, and I saw perhaps some other folks weren't quite as thrilled with it, but I really enjoyed the kind of interstitial fireside theater kind of moments on there, the kind of Lovecraft fireside theater things going on. Is there going to be any more of that on the next one? I know, you don't necessarily want it to become the thing that you have to do, but I particularly enjoyed that stuff. I mean, I really as I said probably in that previous thing, it's good to take the music seriously but not take yourself too seriously, and that's, I got a lot of
Uh-huh.
joy out of that album. Is there going to be any of that stuff on this next one?
I hope so.
That's in discussion right now. Actually,
I hope so.
We were talking about that 2 days ago, I think. Yeah.
Right.
I really hope that we. I hope we do something like that, but something different.
Sure.
Some other different thing. We don't want to get into a formula.
Right.
And I think we need to discuss it a little bit more. But I think we should add something in there, like that, and maybe not quite as much, but something.
I mean,
for sure.
we do like doing voices and playing different kinds of characters, so it may be something that we want to do. I don't know. It all depends, It all depends on if the characters come out.
So when you're working on a Moon X album, at what point is it that you say, I think this is done, or I think that's all the compositions we need? I mean, there must, sometimes, for example, when you're working on an album, you say, I want to accomplish this and this, and I need a slow one right here to balance the hard things. When you're working on something a little more, that can be at times a little more freewheeling, how do you decide that's all we need right there? How, do you do it by consensus, or do you just say, we need 40 minutes of music and, to heck with it, if the inspiration keeps coming, use that for the next one? How does that work?
For me, it's all about how much can you fit on a vinyl album. And we haven't done a vinyl album yet, but we might. And, what are vinyl albums? 44 minutes or something, maybe? Something like that. So we're not going to go and make a 65-minute album on CD and expect to go and make a vinyl with it, but
I'll say we do pay attention to the times. Like we'll say, like Jerry is. I think Jerry, you're an accountant in your pretend life. There, is that right? Bookkeeper,
yes, yeah,
accountant. So Jerry
yes.
being the accountant and me being the retired school teacher that I am. Jerry, I look up to Jerry to keep everything kind of in line. So I ask him, how many minutes do we have so far? How many songs have we mastered over at Ian Beabout's studio? And I think if we're working on a song, we just keep going until it's a consensus. Till we both say, yeah, I think that's done. I don't think we need anything else in there. If we put anything else in, it would kind of ruin it. So that's the hardest thing. It's like with art. I mean, yeah, when do you stop? It's important to know when to stop, and so it's a consensus thing, I think.
Sure.
In fact, we're recording Moon X today. Jerry's recording Michelle on vocals, and I'm recording my son George on drums today on a song called "Hollow Man" that Jerry wrote.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So is that a T.S. Eliot reference there, the Hollow Man? No?
I don't think so.
No,
but
no.
Did he write a poem called "The Hollow Man"?
Yeah.
Oh, we're okay. Now we're gonna have to go.
The Hollow Man. Yes.
Oh, we're gonna. Oh, okay. Now we're gonna have to go read it, so we know looks like we know what we're talking about. So from now on, we'll say yes. Okay. We'll cut the other stuff out, and we'll go. Yes, actually, that's a reference.
That's exactly what we meant. Right. Fantastic.
That's a reference to T.S. Eliot. Of course, it is.
Okay, I want to wind back to something that we were just talking about kind of obliquely there for a second. The length of the LP versus the length of the CD. This is, maybe we won't use this segment, but this is something I've always been interested in. I've always personally felt that the LP length at 40 minutes was the perfect length for an album. And then once, CDs came out, people started making the 65, 70 minutes, 75 minute CD, which always seemed to be, I always like the idea of there being that limitation on there, because sometimes those extra ideas could have been, worked on a little bit more.
I agree. Yeah.
For me, it's 8 to 10 songs and 40 to 44 minutes.
Okay.
Because if you have more songs
See, I
than
told
that,
you he was an accountant.
those other
right?
songs probably aren't going to be listened to. Yeah.
See what I mean?
Numbers.
That's the accountant right
Right.
there. Yeah, I agree. I think the attention span 40 minutes is a good attention span. Anything more than that, and it gets kind of then I have to go take a nap. So 40 minutes is good.
Sure,
In fact, there was one band that said they asked them what one thing do they really concentrate on when they're making an album, and they said, well, our procedure is it has to be under 40 minutes. It has to be under 40 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
So
perfect.
if they get up to
Sure.
38.7, that's when they call it. That's it. We're done. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always worried that the last songs on the CD are never going to be listened to.
Right.
They're the ones that are going to be ignored, and everybody wants to put the shockers right up front, the first couple songs to really get it all rolling, and then everything after that, winds down, and then the last couple songs get ignored if you make your CD too long.
Yeah.
Right.
And
But that's why the programming is really good. The scheduling
I want every song.
Yeah, the scheduling is really important. So, you start off with a kicker, and then you kind of, it moves in waves, as it moves along and stuff. So, intense and a little quieter. And I mean, we've talked about that too. We've said, everything's pretty like this next album that we're working on. There are a lot of good rockers in there and some really intense ones. And so I think at one point we said, we really need something kind of slow and moody, I think here, and so we started to work on something like that. But
Okay, so I do want to wrap up. I would be completely remiss if we didn't talk about this enormous box set of the Muffins that just came out on Cuneiform,
Hey,
and
there it
Jerry's
is.
There it
holding
is.
up a copy of that right there.
Thank you, Jerry.
There it
Yeah.
is. Can we talk a little bit about this? I mean, because this is just a massive brick of music, coming at us, and it's just so mind blowing. Can you tell us about how wonderful it is, Dave?
Oh man, I can't.
It is.
Jerry and I were talking about that. I'm terrible at promoting myself. I hate it. So I can't talk about all the good things that I've done. But so I'm going to give Paul credit for starting it. He's been talking about a box set for years. He said we have enough tapes of us playing live and some studio outtakes that we could do a box set. And so after, I think he's been pushing it for about 4 or 5 years. After about the 5th year, I said, okay, let's start it. So I started to put together some CDs, some examples, some snippets from all over. And I was sending them out. I think I got up to 8 or 9 or 10 CDs. And it wasn't, the rest of the Muffins did not like what I was picking. They thought there was other stuff out there. We decided that we needed an objective person to do that. So we got in touch with Steve, and Steve agreed, bless his heart. Steve Feigenbaum from Cuneiform and Wayside Music, he agreed to be the person to pick all the tracks. He did a really, really good job the way he did it chronologically, trying to pick the best sounding tracks, but also the tracks that had the best energy to it.
All right. Well, thank you both very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time. We, once again, Jerry King, ladies and gentlemen, guitarist, composer, trombonist, wonderful human being. And
Thank you.
joining us once again for the first time, right? Dave Newhouse, keyboardist, composer, saxophonist, clarinetist, et cetera, all around. Wonderful, man of music and ideas and words, just fantastic time speaking to you both.
To find out more about Dave Newhouse and Jerry King, please visit their respective websites and check out the description below this video. To find out more about the Muffins box set, Baker's Dozen, please visit cuneiformrecords.com. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.
You are watching CatSynth TV.